You're listening to the First Fight podcast, home of the people and stories behind the fight. I'm Jennifer Anderson, the host and creator. My goal is to give you a peek into the remarkable world of fighting and create a platform for fighters to tell their stories. In each episode of this series, a different fighter shares a transformative story of their first time. On today's special episode, I have the one and only thick Amy Askren, the newfound influencer and wife of Ben Askren. She's going to be giving us a perspective on what it's like being the spouse or partner of a fighter. And she's a good friend of mine. I thought it'd be fun to do one of our special episodes on a fighter's partner and get their perspective and hear how things are going in their lives right now, what it was like when Ben got started, what she thought of it, and the roller coaster ride that is the fight game when your family member is fighting for a living. So it's a good interview. Love Amy, love Ben, so I'm excited to share it with you. Okay, so today I have a good friend of mine, Amy Askren, on. She is the wife of the notorious Ben Askren.
Notorious.
Yeah. And I'm getting a perspective from a spouse or a partner, and I thought she'd be a good person to do. Even though I feel like you're kind of an outlier, I feel like you just go with the flow a lot of the time. But
he makes that easy.
Yeah, well, Ben's kind of like that as well, obviously. Now, did you know Ben? Were you guys together when he had his first fight already?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Ben and I met after he was done with his college wrestling career, but he was still at Mizzou and he was training for the Olympics. So when I met him, he'd been competing for a while, and what I knew of him was that he just won everything. So I think being naive and not being an athlete, I just kind of felt like, oh, he's a winner. He wins things. And I think that probably took a lot of pressure off because I was so naive about the way things work. So then, yeah, I was there. I was there when he first started fighting. I was there at the Olympics, which is obviously very different than watching a fight. But he actually, and I don't know if he probably told you this, when he started fighting, he couldn't find a fight. So he actually started his own promotion. Did he tell you that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he had his own promotion and he put on his first 3 fights. So like he rented out the venue and found the fighters and he paid them and made the posters and t-shirts and did advertising and all of that. Yeah. So it was probably like an unconventional way to start watching your husband fight. Well, he wasn't my husband at the time. I guess we were engaged and then probably married after like the first 3 or 4.
So what did you think of it? Did you think it would turn into a career?
Oh man, it's hard to think back that far. I think at first I probably thought he's going to try this, but then keep training for the next Olympics. And then I think he quickly realized that he could make more money, long term. Mm-hmm. And then I thought so, but I also figured at some point he'd be a Division I head coach because that was kind of the natural progression for really good wrestlers, national champion wrestlers. They usually end up coaching. So I don't know that I would say I thought it would be like this kind of career where it went on so long, but I knew he would do it for a while.
So that first time, and in general, like, I guess you were naive the first time, but once you kind of figured out the way things went, did you still have that same perspective? Like, oh, he's just going to win? Or did you become more cautious and nervous?
Yeah, I think it was probably, in the very beginning, I think he was fighting pretty, not talented guys. But I think once he got into Bellator, I remember my dad always calling me before the fights and be like, Amy, did you see this guy? He looks really tough. Ben, like, like his physical, like the way he looks is not intimidating. Like you would never guess. He's not like shredded, you know, he's like secretly strong. So even though my dad knew how good he was, he'd always be like, Amy, this guy is shredded. He looks like he's a bad guy.
He'd fall for it every time.
Yeah, I mean, it does. It gets in your head a little bit. And I'm like, oh, man, maybe he is, like, stronger than the last guy. And I think it was probably when he started Bellator, when I started getting nervous. But, you know, Ben, he's so relaxed about competition that it was really not bad until, I would say until I wasn't with him anymore, where I was watching the fights and got there where I'd really start getting nervous. Like he'd be in the back and I'd be in the stands, and that's when it kind of hit me. But when you're around him, he really has this super relaxed vibe, and he's always joking around. And I mean, at so many of his fights, I remember one time in Bellator, we went to a baseball game. I think it was a Cubs game the day of his fight, and it was like 90 degrees outside. And this is, you know, probably not something he would do when he was older and wiser. But we watched a baseball game in the sun the day of his fight in Bellator. And so I think he was just so relaxed about it that it really made me not, you know, not get so nervous until he was in the back and I was by myself. And then I was like, oh, crap. Here we go.
He is unlike anyone I've ever met. In that sense.
Yeah, pretty unusual.
So it's probably, I mean, he's probably like that with everything too in life, where it's kind of, I don't know if it's easier for you or harder, but like he seems so confident. It's like, well, I might as well just go with the flow and see what happens.
I think it definitely helps me because I think I mean, I'm not a huge worrier, but I'm definitely more of a worrier. And if I could sense that he was worried, I think I'd be a whole different person. And, you know, to this day, like he says he doesn't really get nervous, but to this day, like I still question because he has such a mental, like just tells himself how to think and he like goes with it. I always have this like tiny question, like, what is he really like underneath all of that self-thought? Like, is he nervous or does he truly just not, is he missing that genetic factor? Because I feel like everyone else has it, but yeah, he's pretty unusual in that way.
You know, Corey's kind of like, I mean, he's not like Ben. Corey like will say he gets nervous, but it isn't until after the fact. Like if he loses and something was off in the fight, it's not till after the fact that he will say it. You know?
Really?
But I don't think I don't even know if he realizes it until after the fact, you know?
He doesn't think about it before. Yeah, that makes sense.
Was there ever a fight that you were, like, what would you say is a fight that you were concerned about?
Oh, I mean, obviously when he first got into the UFC, like, we were happily retired, you know? Like, I thought for sure he was never going to fight again. Completely happy. Everything was going great. And I think just like knowing that he was coming out of retirement for this, that I felt more of a sense. And, you know, like I've been watching Robbie Lawler for years.
Yeah.
Like Ben actually, he's one of the only fighters where I feel like Ben was like, yeah, that guy's tough. You know, like Ben like respected him. And Ben doesn't talk like that about, like, you know, there's like a handful that he talks like that about. So I would say that one I was pretty nervous for. And I knew, even though I knew how good he was and that he had been that good for a long time, part of me like knew that so many people were like, oh, you know, if you think you're going to be the best and then you walk in and then you lose, obviously a bunch of people are like, oh, you really weren't that good. And I knew, you know, if you know him, you know he is. But I think that probably that one for that reason, more so than like George Masvidal, just because of what was riding on the first one, I think.
Totally. It's hard. It's like gambling. There's a lot on it and anything can happen. but it's like you know how good they are and you want
Yeah.
people to see it. I just never wanted, like, if Corey ever got beat, like
Mm-hmm.
beat, I wouldn't care. But like knockouts to me,
Right.
just like
Yeah,
he
getting
was
hurt.
never getting beat. Like
Mm-hmm.
it was
Where
always
he felt like he was
disappointing.
really hurt afterwards.
Yeah, like I don't think he's ever lost a round outside of being knocked out. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like disappointing in the sense that the people can't see, the fans don't see how good they are, which is
Right.
what's obviously frustrating about this sport. Is that's all it
Right.
takes, you know? I mean, I'm sure you experienced that with the Masvidal fight. I mean, how did that feel seeing that for the first time?
Yeah. I mean, people have asked me that, and I feel like you go into this mode of like, at the time I was like, I need to get down there and make sure he's okay and go to the
Mhm.
hospital with him. So I went into like crisis management mode, and I felt like as soon as it happened, I just got up out of my seat and I started walking straight down there instead of, like, I don't feel like I took it in, and I didn't stare at him while he was on the ground. Like I was running
Mhm.
down there, to be there when he was going to get carried out. So I think it would have been a lot worse if I were home watching on my TV, because then you hear the announcers talking about it. They play the replay. So in the moment, I was just really focused on getting down there. And then I was like with him when he started talking. And so that really wasn't as bad as it probably looked on TV for me to be there. And then like as soon as he started talking to me and just knowing that he wasn't, that he was going to be okay, it was almost immediately, a relief. Whereas I don't know how people do it when they watch the husbands that are fighting like every round and it's just like a bloodbath.
Mhm.
Like after watching one of those fights, I feel like I'd be a whole different person watching my husband go in the ring to fight, knowing that you've seen it before. It's like PTSD.
Yeah, like, I mean, seeing my husband get knocked out is definitely like traumatic.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one of them specifically I thought was more traumatic, but
Yeah.
I've never had to watch him like take a beating,
Right.
which is worse. Like
Right. I think it's
I'm
worse.
friends with Edson Barboza's wife, and that fight with Khabib, like I couldn't sit and watch that. Like I felt so bad for her because it was
Yeah.
just long, like at least with the knockout it's over with. And
Right. I feel like I don't know if I could watch it, but you feel a responsibility to be watching, right?
mm-hmm,
It's like you
mm-hmm.
feel like you're a traitor if you like turn away or you're have your head in your lap. But I don't know if I could watch that. And there's been one fight where Ben got hit a lot, but he got hit. It was before he said he knew how to like do a lot of damage on top. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember maybe it was Lyman Good. I'm trying to remember what fight it was, but the guy on bottom was like hitting him from the bottom, and none of them were like really damaging. But at the end of the fight, his face was like flat. It was just totally swollen.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like I got the tiniest taste of him getting hit a lot, but not where you could like hear the crack, where some of these fights, it's like, oh, I just don't think I could. You want to be supportive, but I would have a hard time being like, yeah, let's do this again.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like I'm a little lucky in that way. And so are you.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not a doctor, but sometimes I would like to think that at least when Corey's been finished, it was a quick knockout. It's not like he's taking damage and like continuing to go. Like at that weight, I don't feel like you can do that. But
yeah,
you look at some of the guys that are in these like bangers all the time, and you wonder, like, are they taking more damage?
Yeah,
Like, to the brain in the long run than just getting knocked out. Like at least Corey or the guys just get put out and it's over.
Yes.
That's what I
for
always
sure.
thought.
I would take that. I would take that over a full beating any day.
It's a long time.
Right. Yeah, and I know like the Ben's fight when he got knocked out fast, like I think it looks good for TV, but like I don't feel like it was a really damaging knockout, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he had no symptoms. Like the next morning we woke up, we went out to a party that night. He had a party he was supposed to host or something, and we still went, and he was completely fine. We had friends there, so I don't know.
Corey's been lucky too. I mean, he had obviously that scare after the last fight, but he's never had any, and I don't even know what that means, but he's never had any like post-concussive symptoms, which is
right.
But at least.
Oh yeah, that's a
quality of life anyways.
Huge deal. Yeah, I mean, I don't think you'd even want them fighting again if they had any.
I wouldn't.
No, it's not worth it. Nothing's worth it.
Yeah. So
yeah, I mean, that's the thing with Ben going back to this boxing thing, which is hilarious. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I'm like, well, even though this guy's not that good, like, what's it worth to you? You know, is it, you have to kind of weigh your options, because anyone can hit you. Like, any bum can get a hit in, right? So it's like, you know, we were so happily retired again. And Ben just had his hip replacement not even 6 months ago. So I'm like, why are we doing this again? But I don't know. He just thinks that things are fun, and if he feels like doing it, he'll do it. And that's pretty much it.
You know, obviously that's why you're together, is like you're good. You're good at, if you were like super type A, you definitely could not be with someone like Ben. Like, you're good at going with the flow, even though you may have reservations about it. You trust him to make the right decisions for himself.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I was just telling Corey, like, Ben knows how to play the game. He did it right, you know.
He has a lot of fun with it, I think. He does. He enjoys it. I remember him telling me about this a few months ago, like, oh, this YouTuber guy wants to fight somebody. I used to fight my friends in my basement for fun. Like, why not? I should do this. Like, oh, really? This is just for fun?
Well, it is. I mean, Ben, I know, is having fun when he's, I mean, I'm not familiar with, it's not our generation, really, but he pisses me, you know, he annoys me that he wants to be a boxer. So I'm excited for Ben.
You mean Ben?
No, that this.
I was like, Ben doesn't even want to be a boxer.
No,
yes,
no,
other guy. Okay. Did you know who he was? Because I had no idea.
I've heard of him because I've heard of them boxing, and I was like, this is bullshit. Like, you can't just like play boxing and decide you want to do it, you know?
Yeah.
So I haven't actually watched him fight, but there's a lot of riding on Ben because I can't stand him. I don't think anyone can stand it.
Great.
No, I think Ben, I mean, I think Eddie Alvarez said it too. Like, Ben knows how to win. Ben's trained at a really high level. I mean, it's really win-win either way, but this kid has no idea, like, what level he's trained at. Even when he started kind of trying to, like, play mind games, I'm like, he has no idea. Like,
I know. I almost kind of felt bad for him because I was like, buddy, you're out of your league. You can't dent the armor, you know?
He doesn't know. Like, Ben.
No, you can't phase Ben. Like, you couldn't say anything to him that would be like, oh, he's in my head now. Like, I just don't think he's
probably the only one that, like, could never be phased by any sort of.
I don't know. It's unusual. I mean, you understand him. I think Ben, we've talked about this before, and at the risk of sounding like, I don't want this to be like appropriation or anything, but like, we've talked about this. Like Ben might have some level of like Asperger's.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I'm allowed to say that. We have like seriously discussed him getting tested so that I don't get in trouble for sharing that. Because he's missing certain like social like awareness things that are beneficial to him, but that we all, like most people, struggle with, you know, like caring what someone thinks.
I totally get it. I mean, he's not at Ben's level, but he's similar in the sense where I'm like, how do you just not care what people think? Like,
right.
I don't understand. You just say whatever you think. There's
Yeah.
no filter. It's like a child sometimes. I'm
Right.
like, no, you don't have to say everything.
I know.
Like, just
it's a hard line too, because you probably respect it to some extent, right?
And he gets respect for it. People like it.
Yeah, but you respect him too for it, right? Yeah. Like to some extent. But then sometimes you're like, come on, like not.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm like, you're lucky. I'm sensitive, but I'm like,
yeah,
not that sensitive where like he's constantly putting his foot in his mouth. I'm like, what?
Mm-hmm.
You don't need to say it just because you think it.
Exactly. Yeah. Or just like saying exactly what you want and not thinking of. It's hard to explain. I remember one time we had like friends over for dinner, and he decided he wanted to get ice cream. And like right after we ate, he stood up and he's like, okay, I'm going to get ice cream. And he's like, all right, Amy, let's go. And we were at our house. We had friends over for dinner, right? He didn't say like, hey, do you guys want to go get ice cream with us? He just like got up and he's like, well, the night's over. We were all having a great time. It was like still pretty early. And he's like, okay, I'm going to get ice cream, and just kind of stood there awkwardly like until everyone got up and left. Like, well, I guess the night's over. Time to go home.
Imagine how he's going to be when he's old.
Oh my gosh. He is. He's getting a little worse in that way where I'm like, I feel like you've been enabled by saying that like you're older, so you can just act like this now. I mean, Corey's still a little bit young, right? What is he, like 32 or 33?
31.
Oh, 31? Oh my gosh, he's
a
baby.
Yeah, I know.
Well, you still have a few years before he starts getting a little out of control.
So what do you think after this? You think he's going to be officially retired?
You probably have to ask him that. I think I have to be off the record for, I don't know. I think he has, I mean, he's got his, like, he always has, like, thinking 8 moves down the line, you know? Like, even when he was in the UFC, I think he had this, like, plan that obviously didn't go his way, that he was just going to beat, like, 2 guys, maybe 3, get a title shot, and then retire. Like, he just thinks, and he's like, oh, this is who I'd call out, this is who I'd call out. Like, he just knows everything. He doesn't talk about it, really. Mm-hmm. Like, if you asked him, he would have the answer. Oh yeah, so I'm sure, you know, he's got some kind of play, but I mean, worst case, like, we were very happily retired. I thought we were enjoying it. And when I say retired, obviously I just mean from fighting. Like, he was working more than he ever had before. He had, like, I think he has 3 or 4 podcasts and coaching full-time at the wrestling academy. So definitely staying really busy. Yeah. But I don't know. Now, I think he listened to some podcasts, some guy that was on Joe Rogan, I think, that had a hip replacement, and he was talking about how he, like, felt so good, and he was doing, maybe competing again in something, and Ben, I think he got excited and was like, yeah, I'm going to just get back at it.
It's hard to give that up.
Yeah, I guess so. I think, yeah, some people like it, as long as it's not, you know, like you're desperate for money and you have to do it for that reason. Mm-hmm. I think that's probably like the last reason that you should ever do it. But it seems like he just wants to for fun. And so, you know, what's the worst that can happen? I really just, all I hope is that, you know, nothing crazy happens. And it seems like any hit can hurt somebody if it's just the wrong hit. So just always hope that he is protected. And I think that's the worry that any wife has, you know,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah. Like I said, I think his experience competing, he'll know how to handle this.
Yeah. He's not worried. He's having a lot of fun with it. And yeah, you just have to go day by day. I think the frustrating part for me is like when I was watching fighting, I was nervous until he took the guy down. And then I was like, okay, now I can just relax and watch the fight. Like, he's got this. And now I'm like, you mean you're taking a fight where like you have to stand up the whole time?
You gotta be nervous the whole
Fun
time.
at all. I don't like that you have to watch this all the time, Jenny. Like, I feel like Corey stands up quite a bit.
Yeah, well, we're working on that.
I don't want to watch that. I'm sure fans want to watch it, but I don't.
No, they do, but it's like, and he's good at it. You know, I don't doubt his skills.
Yeah.
Like, anyone can knock you out, but like, no one can dominate the way he does wrestling. So why would you even give that up, you know? So, like, anytime he spars too, the second he takes someone down, I just walk away. I don't even watch anymore because it's just I know he'll control the fight, you know. So
you would probably like to see more of that.
Yeah, so I think that's what he's getting back to.
Yeah.
Finally, kind of, not that he was trying to be anything different, but
right.
I mean, it's MMA, it's part of it, but
for sure. Yeah, now that Ben's kind of out of this world, I'm looking at you and I'm like, I don't envy. I feel bad. I don't envy that you have to keep looking, you know, getting
harder.
Yeah.
It doesn't get easier. So
well, yeah, and I think as you have kids too, and you know, you're someone's parent now. Yeah, it changes your risk level. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I always tell Ben this, like before we had kids, I got my paragliding pilot license and I was like jumping off cliffs with a parachute and I was like, this is fine. Everything's going to be great. I'll for sure land. And now I'm like, are you crazy? I would never do that. Like,
I know.
I would probably die, but I never had that thought before. So I wonder if that's a female thing.
Well, I know definitely like being pregnant makes me like extra nervous.
For
like,
sure.
The fights I've watched with him when I was pregnant, I was like, they're the two fights I almost didn't watch.
Yeah.
Last
and
one,
that's gotta be some nature thing, right? Where you need like the protection for this baby that's growing inside of you. It's probably in the wild, I would guess.
Something.
It's a similar situation.
Yeah. It doesn't get easier, but he's actually going to be fighting, I think, the day before Ben on the 16th.
Oh, great. That'll be a fun weekend for us.
I know.
Are you going to go? Because I know, I mean, obviously you'll have like a very small baby, but even with COVID stuff, do you think they'll let
I don't think, unless things change.
I have a guest, Ben sticking his head in my podcast studio. By mine, I mean his. You want to say hi to Jenny?
You're taking over now.
We're on Zoom.
What's up?
Hi, Ben. How are you?
Good. You popped that second kid out yet?
No.
It's the day before my birthday.
Still suffering.
Oh, that's really, really soon.
Yeah. Oh, man. I miss you guys.
I miss you too. Well, I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, I feel so cool.
You're kind of an outlier. I mean, Ben definitely is. So, but I definitely wanted to get another perspective from more of the spouse's side or partner's side. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'd be curious to hear more spouses and see, I don't know, if they're totally different or what. Well,
you're definitely, I mean, you have to be pretty go with the flow to be married to someone that does this, I think.
Yeah.
It's not a very stable existence, but you're good at that. You have to be, but
so are you. That's for sure.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks again for listening to the First Fight series. Love this special episode. We even got a pop-in surprise guest appearance from Ben Askren. So thank you guys for coming on the show. I wish you nothing but the best of luck for your upcoming fight. You can tune in and see Ben Askren fight Jake Paul, the YouTuber, in a boxing fight this April. And Amy, I appreciate you for sharing a little bit of the behind the scenes of what it's like being the wife of a fighter, specifically Ben, which I'm sure is an interesting ride. And like I said, thank you everyone for listening. Make sure you follow us on Instagram at The First Fight to see all our upcoming episodes. And you can always go to our website, firstfightpodcast.com. Please share with your friends, leave reviews, like, comment, whatever you can do to help support this project of mine. Thanks again.